Harry Houdini. On October 22, 1926, 52-year-old Harry Houdini was relaxing in his dressing room at the Princess Theatre in Montreal. Houdini had spent 3 decades building the most successful magic career in history, commanding fees of thousands of dollars per performance, and selling out theaters across North America and Europe. His escape acts had made him wealthy and famous worldwide. That afternoon, a McGill University student named J. Gordon Whitehead visited backstage with some friends. Whitehead asked if it was true that Houdini could withstand hard punches to his abdomen. Houdini was reclining on a couch reading Mail and confirmed he had developed his abdominal muscles to take heavy blows. Before Houdini could stand up or properly brace himself, Whitehead suddenly delivered several forceful punches to Houdini's stomach. Houdini winced and asked him to stop. The punches had caught him completely unprepared. Over the next few days, Houdini developed severe abdominal pain and a fever. He refused to seek medical attention and continued performing. By October 24th, during a show in Detroit, Houdini could barely stand. His temperature had reached 104 degrees Fahrenheit. After the performance, doctors examined him and diagnosed acute appendicitis. His appendix had ruptured, likely aggravated by the backstage punches. Surgeons operated immediately, but the infection had already spread through his abdomen. Harry Houdini died on October 31st, 1926, Halloween, from peritonitis caused by the ruptured appendix. The greatest escape artist in history, who had freed himself from handcuffs, straitjackets, water tanks, and buried coffins, couldn't escape a sucker punch in a dressing room. His estate was substantial, built over decades of sold-out performances. The insurance company paid double indemnity, ruling his death accidental due to the backstage assault. Houdini's death on Halloween cemented his legend, and spiritualists claimed they had cursed him. His widow held seances for years trying to contact him, using a code they had agreed upon. He never appeared. Joseph Burris. On October 30th, 1990, 32-year-old Joseph Burris was preparing for what he hoped would be his breakthrough performance. Burris, who performed under the name Amazing Joe, had spent years trying to establish himself as a professional magician in the Fresno, California area. He decided to attempt one of magic's most dangerous stunts on the anniversary of Houdini's death. Burris planned to be buried alive in a clear plastic coffin under 7 tons of wet concrete and dirt, then escape before suffocating. He had arranged for a local news crew to film the attempt, hoping the publicity would launch his career to the next level. Family, friends, and a small crowd gathered at a Fresno park for the performance. Burris was handcuffed and locked inside the clear plastic coffin, which was lowered into a grave. A concrete truck began pouring wet cement directly onto the coffin. Almost immediately, something went wrong. The weight of the concrete was far greater than the plastic coffin could support. As the cement poured, witnesses heard cracking sounds. The plastic coffin buckled and collapsed under the tremendous weight. Burris was crushed instantly inside the coffin, as 7 tons of wet concrete compressed around him. The news cameras captured the entire disaster. Rescue workers frantically tried to dig through the concrete, but there was no saving him. Joseph Burris died in front of his family and the television crew he had hoped would make him famous. Investigators later determined the plastic coffin was completely inadequate for supporting that much weight. Houdini had used reinforced caskets with air supplies and careful engineering. Burris had attempted the stunt without proper equipment or safety measures. The footage of his death became a cautionary tale taught in magic schools. His attempt to replicate Houdini's legend on the anniversary of Houdini's death ended with his own death in the exact manner he had tried to escape. Chung Ling-Soo. On March 23, 1918, 56-year-old William Ellsworth Robinson took the stage at the Wood Green Empire Theatre in London for what would be his final performance. Robinson had spent nearly 2 decades performing under the stage name Chung Ling-Soo, pretending to be a Chinese magician. He wore elaborate costumes, maintained a full Chinese persona, and never spoke English in public. His act had made him one of Britain's highest-paid variety performers. That evening's performance included the bullet catch, one of magic's most dangerous tricks. The illusion involved assistants firing marked bullets at the magician, who would catch them in his hand or teeth. The trick required carefully rigged rifles that appeared to fire real bullets but actually used stage mechanics to make it safe. Around 10:45 p.m., Chung Ling-Soo stood center stage as his assistants prepared to fire. The rifles were aimed and triggers pulled. A loud bang echoed through the theater, but instead of catching the bullets, Chung Ling-Soo staggered backward. For the first time in his entire career, he broke character and spoke in English. "Oh my God, something's happened. Lower the curtain," he shouted. A real bullet had fired from one of the rifles and struck him in the chest. A mechanical failure in the gun's rigging had allowed a live round to discharge. The curtain dropped as stagehands rushed to help. Robinson was taken to a hospital where surgeons operated, but the bullet had caused too much damage. William Ellsworth Robinson died the next morning. The man who had spent decades pretending to be Chinese spoke his first public English words while dying on stage. Investigations revealed the rifle's mechanism had degraded over years of use. The bullet catch trick was banned from many theaters after his death. Robinson's deception was exposed in newspapers worldwide. He had maintained the Chinese persona so convincingly that many audience members and even fellow performers had believed he was actually Asian throughout his entire 20-year career. Washington Irving Bishop. On May 13, 1889, 33-year-old Washington Irving Bishop was performing at the Lambs Club in New York City. Bishop had built a successful career as a mentalist and thought reader, entertaining wealthy audiences at private clubs and theaters across America. He suffered from a medical condition that caused cataleptic seizures, episodes where he would appear to be dead, with no detectable pulse or breathing for extended periods. Bishop carried a note in his pocket at all times, warning doctors that he was prone to these trances, and explicitly forbidding any autopsy for at least 48 hours after apparent death. During his performance that evening, Bishop suddenly collapsed on stage. Club doctors were summoned and examined him. They detected no pulse or breathing and declared Washington Irving Bishop dead. His body was taken to a private room while authorities were notified. Several prominent New York physicians arrived and decided to perform an immediate autopsy. They wanted to examine Bishop's brain to study the source of his mentalist abilities. The doctors did not check his pockets for any identifying papers or warnings. They began the autopsy by opening Bishop's skull to remove his brain for study. When Bishop's mother learned what had happened, she was horrified. She insisted her son had still been alive when the doctors cut into him. She filed lawsuits claiming the autopsy itself had killed her son, that the doctors had essentially committed vivisection on a living man in a cataleptic trance. The case went to court, with medical experts debating whether Bishop had truly been dead before the autopsy began. The doctors maintained they had followed proper procedures for determining death. Bishop's mother argued they had murdered her son by ignoring his well-known medical condition. The case was eventually settled out of court, though details of the financial settlement were kept private. The incident led to reforms in how death was determined and documented, particularly for patients with unusual medical conditions. Bishop's brain remained preserved as a medical specimen for years. The Great Lafayette. On May 9, 1911, 40-year-old Sigmund Neuberger was performing at the Empire Palace Theatre in Edinburgh, Scotland. Neuberger performed under the stage name The Great Lafayette and was one of Europe's highest-paid illusionists, commanding enormous fees for his elaborate stage productions. His show featured live animals, complex mechanical illusions, and dozens of assistants. Lafayette was famously paranoid about people sneaking into his sold-out performances without paying. He had explicitly ordered theater staff to keep all side doors and emergency exits locked during shows to prevent anyone from entering for free. That evening's performance was proceeding normally, trick popularized by Houdini, where the magician was locked inside a water-filled milk can and had to escape before drowning. The trick appeared dangerous, but included hidden mechanisms, allowing the performer to open the can from inside. That evening, Genesta was handcuffed and locked inside the milk can, which was then filled with water. A curtain was drawn around the can to hide the escape from the audience. An orchestra played loud music to create suspense and cover any sounds of the escape. Inside the curtain, Genesta attempted to open the can's lid using the secret release mechanism, but the lid wouldn't budge. Unknown to Genesta, the milk can had been dropped during shipping to the theater. The impact had dented the rim just enough to jam the escape mechanism. As the orchestra played and the audience waited, Genesta struggled desperately inside the sealed, water-filled can. His assistants on stage assumed everything was proceeding normally. The music was intentionally loud to prevent the audience from hearing anything. After several minutes, stagehands realized something was wrong. They broke open the can and pulled Genesta out. He had drowned. The entire tragedy had unfolded behind the curtain while the orchestra played, and the audience sat unaware. Genesta was pronounced dead at the scene. The investigation revealed the dented rim had made escape impossible. The milk can trick was redesigned by magicians worldwide after his death, with additional safety releases and better communication systems between the performer and assistants. Genesta's death demonstrated how even a small equipment malfunction could turn a practiced illusion into a death trap when combined with the secrecy and misdirection inherent to magic performances. Charles Rowan. In 1930, approximately 30-year-old Charles Rowan was performing throughout the United States under the stage name Carr the Magician. Rowan had developed a dramatic escape act that combined elements of Houdini's straitjacket escapes with a dangerous vehicle stunt. His signature trick involved being bound in a straitjacket and chained to the ground while an automobile raced toward him at 45 miles per hour. He had to escape his restraints before being run over. During one performance, Rowan was secured in the straitjacket and chained to the pavement. The automobile began its approach, accelerating to the planned speed. Rowan worked frantically to escape the straitjacket's restraints. The crowd watched as the car bore down on him, but Rowan couldn't free himself in time. The automobile struck him before he could escape. He was run over and fatally injured in front of the audience. As he lay dying, Rowan's final words were directed at the car's driver, absolving him of blame. "It wasn't his fault," he said. Charles Rowan died from his injuries. The stunt was immediately banned from most venues. Investigators found that Rowan had been attempting to perform the trick faster than in rehearsals, likely trying to increase the dramatic tension. The reduced time proved insufficient for escape. Other escape artists abandoned similar vehicle-based stunts after his death. The incident highlighted how even experienced performers could fatally misjudge the margins of error in dangerous illusions when trying to enhance the spectacle for audiences. Vivian Hensley. On July 6, 1938, 43-year-old Vivian Hensley was performing an amateur magic trick for his son's Boy Scout troop in Indiana. Hensley worked as a dentist, but enjoyed performing magic tricks as a hobby. That afternoon, he decided to demonstrate the classic swallowing razor blades illusion for the young scouts. The trick typically involved palming the razor blades and using thread to create the illusion they had been swallowed and regurgitated. But something went wrong during Hensley's performance. He accidentally allowed one of the razor blades to slip down his throat. The blade cut into his esophagus and stomach. Hensley realized immediately what had happened, but he was surrounded by children. Not wanting to frighten the Boy Scouts, he finished the trick and pretended everything was fine. He continued with the performance, acting as though nothing was wrong. After the scouts left, Hensley sought medical attention. Doctors discovered the razor blade had caused significant internal injuries. Over the next several days, Hensley's condition deteriorated. Internal bleeding and infection from the cuts spread through his digestive system. Vivian Hensley died from complications of the injuries. His decision to hide his injury from the children, while protecting them from trauma, had prevented him from receiving immediate emergency treatment that might have saved his life. The incident became a cautionary tale about amateur magicians attempting dangerous tricks without proper training or equipment. Professional magicians emphasized that tricks involving apparent danger to the performer required extensive practice and safety measures that hobbyists often lacked. Jeff Rayburn Hooper,